My daughter-in-law dumped her 2 sons on my porch at 10 p.m. promising to be back in 4 hours. She never returned. 8 years later, she sued me for kidnapping. But she didn't know about the envelope I'd been saving. When I handed it to the judge, he looked at her, then at me and asked, "Do they know what's in this?" I just shook my head. "Not yet, Your Honor. My name is Julius Sinclair. I'm 71 years old now, a retired carpenter living in Atlanta. My house is quiet. Too quiet most days ever since my wife Sarah passed. This old house, the one I built with my own 2 hands, was supposed to be my peace. But peace is a luxury. 8 years ago, a promise was broken on this very porch, and it shattered that peace forever. They say time heals all wounds. They're wrong. Time doesn't heal. It hardens. It takes grief and anger and bakes them into patience. And patience, well, patience is the most overlooked weapon in the world. It all started 8 years ago. I was 63. The first sound was the scream of tires on my quiet street. It was 10 o'clock at night. I was half watching the news, the volume low, just letting the noise fill the empty living room. That sound, it was wrong. It wasn't a celebration. It was panicked. A second later, a fist hit my front door. It wasn't a knock. It was a pound, frantic and desperate, like someone was trying to break the wood down. I pushed myself up from my old recliner. My bones aren't what they used to be. "Who is it?" I called out. I looked through the peephole and my heart dropped straight into my stomach. It was her, Brenda, my daughter-in-law. I fumbled with the deadbolt and chain. The moment I cracked the door, she practically fell inside. She was a storm of blonde hair and chaos. Her eyes were wide, darting around, the whites of them bloodshot. She wasn't drunk. I knew what drunk looked like on her. This was different. This was the raw, electric panic of a cornered animal. "Julius, thank God!" she gasped, her voice raspy. "You're home. I need your help, please." My eyes went past her shoulder to the beat-up, dirty beige sedan idling at my curb, the engine sputtering. The back door was a different color, a rusted gray primer. In the dim glow of the streetlight, I could see 2 small shadows in the back seat. Dante, my oldest grandson, he was 7, and Malik, just 5. Both of them were fast asleep, their heads pressed against the dirty glass. A cold dread, heavy and slow, settled in my gut. "Brenda, what's wrong? Where's Andre?" She waved her hand impatiently like she was swatting away a fly. "Andre, it's always Andre. He did it again. It's bad this time, Julius. Real bad." She ran her hands through her stringy hair, making it stand up in wild tufts. "Look, I don't have time to explain. I gotta go fix this. I just need 4 hours. That's all. I swear to God, Julius, 4 hours. She grabbed my arm. Her nails dug into my skin. "I'll be back at 2 a.m. on the dot. Just watch the boys for me, please." 4 hours. The lie slid off her tongue, so easily greased with panic. My patience for my son Andre had evaporated years ago. It had been chiseled away piece by piece until there was nothing left. The last time I'd seen him 6 months prior, he'd shown up at my door asking for money. I told him no. I told him the bank was closed. So he waited. He waited until I was in the bathroom, and he stole $200 from my wallet, the one I kept on the kitchen counter. My own son. $200. In trouble. In Andre's world was a code word. It meant he'd stolen from the wrong person or owed the wrong person. It meant he was so deep in his addiction that he was drowning and he was trying to pull everyone else down with him. I looked at Brenda, at her frantic eyes. My late wife, Sarah. God rest her soul, she never trusted this woman. "That girl's eyes only see what she can take, Julius." Sarah used to warn me, her voice low and steady. "She don't love Andre. She loves the storm he carries with him." I'd dismissed it back then. I told Sarah it was Andre's life, Andre's choice. Now her words were ringing in my ears like a church bell. But my gaze drifted back to the car, to those 2 little boys, my blood, my son's sons. They hadn't done anything to deserve this. They were just cargo being hauled through the wreckage of their parents' lives. I set my jaw. 4 hours, I said. My voice came out harder than I expected, hard as the oak I used to build with. 2 a.m. You be back here. Yes, I promise. Thank you, Julius. The relief washed over her face so fast it was sickening. She sprinted back to the car, yanking open the back door. The weak dome light flickered on, showing me the 2 boys blinking in sleepy confusion. They were only in thin cartoon character pajamas. Malik didn't even have shoes on. His bare feet dangled over the seat. "Get up, go to Grandpa," Brenda ordered, her voice sharp. She practically dragged them out. Dante stumbled half asleep, his eyes barely open. Malik started to whimper. She shoved them toward me, toward the porch light. Then she grabbed a beat-up Spider-Man backpack from the passenger seat. The zipper was broken on one side. She threw it at my feet. It landed with a soft, unimpressive thud. "Their stuff's in there. I love you, babies." She gave each of them a quick, dry peck on the top of their heads. It wasn't a kiss. It was an afterthought. Then she was back in the driver's seat. "Brenda!" I yelled, stepping forward. But it was too late. She slammed the car into gear. The transmission groaned. She hit the gas so hard the car fishtailed on the asphalt, the tires screaming again. And then it was just a pair of red taillights disappearing around the corner. I stood there on the porch, the night air suddenly cold. Just me and these two little boys shivering in their pajamas. "Mommy's coming back," Malik asked, his voice tiny, his words slurred with sleep. I swallowed the hard lump in my throat. I didn't have an answer for him. "Let's get inside, boys. It's cold." I ushered them in. I locked the deadbolt. The house felt different already. I took them to the kitchen, warmed up some milk on the stove the way Sarah used to do. They were too tired to even drink it. They sat at the table, their heads nodding. I led them down the hall to Andre's old room, to his old twin bed. I didn't have pajamas for them, so I just tucked them in, one at each end. They were asleep before their heads even hit the pillow. I went back to the living room. I sat down in my recliner. I didn't turn the TV back on. I just waited. I listened for the sound of that sputtering engine, listened for footsteps on my porch. The old grandfather clock in the hall, my mother's wedding present, ticked. Each tick was a hammer blow in the silence. Talk, 11 p.m. The house was still. Midnight. I got up, checked the locks again, walked down the hall, looked in on the boys. They were breathing deep. They were safe, at least. 1 a.m. The silence of the street outside was absolute. Then 2 a.m., 4 hours. The deadline. I stared at the clock. I stared at my cell phone on the side table. It was dark. It didn't ring. It didn't light up. She's just late, I told myself. She ran into trouble. But there's no traffic in Atlanta at 2 in the morning. Not the kind that makes you this late without a single call. 3 a.m. The silence from that phone was louder than a scream. It was an answer. I knew as I sat there in the dark, I just knew. This wasn't a delay, this wasn't an emergency, this was an escape. She had lied, she had dumped them, and she was not coming back. The sun came up the next morning with a cruel, cheerful brightness. It felt wrong. The world shouldn't be so bright when my grandsons' lives had just been shattered. I hadn't slept. Not 1 minute. I just sat in that chair listening to the clock. The first thing I did while the boys were still asleep was call. I had to. I called Andre's phone. The recorded message was cold. "The number you have dialed is not in service." I expected that. He probably sold the phone weeks ago. Then I called Brenda's number. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. "The subscriber's mailbox is full and cannot accept new messages at this time." Full. That one word told me everything. It meant I wasn't the only one looking for her. It meant she had cut the cord. The boys woke up a little while later. The first words out of Malik's mouth were, "I'm hungry, Grandpa." I made them scrambled eggs and toast. I watched them eat. Dante, the 7-year-old, ate like he hadn't seen a full meal in days. He finished his plate in seconds, his eyes darting around. Then his eyes went right to Malik's plate. Malik, my 5-year-old grandson, saw him looking, and without a word he just pushed his own half-eaten plate across the table. "You can have it, Dante. I'm full." A 7-year-old shouldn't be that hungry. A 5-year-old shouldn't already know how to give up his own food for his brother. The anger in me, which had been simmering all night, started to build into a cold, hard rage. After they ate, I went for that Spider-Man backpack, the one she'd thrown at my feet. I was hoping for something, a clue. Clothes, paperwork, a note, anything. I unzipped it. It was full of nothing. 2 sets of dirty clothes balled up at the bottom, a single worn-out teddy bear with one eye missing and stuffing coming out of its arm, and a single piece of paper crumpled. My heart jumped. But no. It was just an overdue power bill. 2 months past due. The address was for an apartment complex across town. That was it. No diapers, and I had a feeling Malik still needed them at night. No toothbrushes, no medicine, no books. Nothing a mother packs, not even for a 4-hour trip. This wasn't a temporary handoff. This was disposal. I put the boys in my old pickup truck. "We're going for a little ride," I told them. "I'm not a fool. I'm a carpenter. I know you have to measure twice before you cut." I had to be sure. I drove straight to the address on that power bill. It was one of those run-down 3-story apartment complexes, the kind where the paint is peeling and hope goes to die. I parked, told the boys to stay put, and locked the doors. I walked into the leasing office. The air was stale, smelled like old coffee. A tired-looking woman sat behind a metal desk chewing gum loudly. "I'm looking for Andre and Brenda Sinclair," I said. "Apartment 2B. She looked up annoyed that I'd interrupted her. "Sinclair. They're gone." My blood went cold. "Gone? What do you mean, gone?" "I mean gone. Moved out," she said, popping her gum as she flipped through a messy ledger. 2 days ago. Owe us 2 months' rent and we gotta replace the whole carpet. Smelled like, well, you don't want to know." She squinted at me. "You family good, 'cause they left a mountain of trash by the dumpster." My stomach turned. 2 days ago. That's what I said. She was about to look away, but then she paused. "But the blonde wife Brenda, she did come back. Last night, around 8 p.m. I leaned forward. "Last night at 8. "Yep. Had her car loaded up. She ran back inside, grabbed the last few bags. Looked like she was in a real hurry. I figured she forgot something important. 8 p.m. That was 2 hours before she showed up at my house. It all clicked into place, sharp and painful. She wasn't running from Andre. She wasn't in trouble. She had this whole thing planned. She went back to that empty apartment, got what she wanted, loaded her car, and then she looked at her 2 little boys. She realized she couldn't run, couldn't start her new life with them slowing her down. So she drove them to me. I wasn't a savior. I was a solution. I was the last stop, the convenient solution, the dumping ground. I walked back to my truck in a daze. Dante and Malik were watching me through the window, their small faces full of a trust I didn't deserve yet. They had no idea. They had just been officially, completely orphaned. Their mother was gone. Their father was God knows where. I started the engine. The feeling in my chest wasn't grief. It wasn't even just anger. It was steel. It was resolve. If their world just fell apart, I would have to be the foundation. I didn't know how. I was 63 years old, a widower, set in my ways. But I knew I couldn't fail them. I pulled out of that parking lot and drove straight to the Atlanta Police Department. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after I got back from the police station. The officer had been sympathetic but firm. He took my statement, filed a missing person report for Brenda and an all-points bulletin for Andre. But he told me, "Mr. Sinclair, right now, this is a child abandonment case, and that means you have to call CPS. You have to." I watched the boys in the living room. I'd found an old box of Andre's childhood building blocks, and Malik was completely absorbed, his small brow furrowed in concentration as he tried to build a tower. Dante was just sitting on the floor watching, his face blank. I was 63 years old. My wife was gone. My son was a ghost. And now I had 2 small broken children in my house. I thought of Sarah. I found myself thinking of her a lot these days. She had been the strong one, the one who saw things clearly. I was the soft touch. Andre had always been able to fool me, but never Sarah. I remember one Sunday dinner years ago, right after Andre married Brenda. Sarah was quiet the whole meal. Later, when we were doing the dishes, I asked her what was wrong. She stopped a soapy plate in her hand and looked at me with those clear, honest eyes. "That girl's eyes only see what she can take, Julius," she said, her voice low. "She doesn't love our son. She loves the chaos he brings. And she's looking for what she can get out of it." I had told her to give the girl a chance. I'd said Andre was finally settling down. Sarah just shook her head. "He's not settling down, Julius. He's just found a partner in his storm." She had been right. And now the storm had passed, and it had left these 2 boys shipwrecked on my shore. I knew what I had to do. Sarah would have done it immediately. I couldn't just keep them. This wasn't the old days. This was a world of paperwork and legal systems. If I didn't do this right, if Brenda ever came back, she could accuse me of anything. My hand was heavy as I picked up the phone. I dialed the number for the Georgia Division of Family and Children's Services, CPS. The phone rang for an eternity. Finally, a woman's voice, professional and tired, answered. "DFCS, this is Mrs. Jeffries. How can I help you?" My throat was dry. I had to clear it. My name is Julius Sinclair. I think my grandsons have been abandoned. I told her everything. The 10 p.m. drop-off, the 4 hours lie, the empty apartment, the full voicemail, the disconnected phone. I told her I had just come from the police. Mrs. Jeffries was silent for a moment. I could hear her typing on a keyboard. "Mr. Sinclair," she said, her voice a little softer now, "you're in a difficult position. You're the paternal grandfather, correct?" "Yes, ma'am, I am." "All right. Because of that, we have options. We can initiate what's called kinship care. But I need to be clear with you, sir. These children are now technically wards of the state. We would need to send a caseworker out immediately to assess your home. And to assess them." My heart hammered in my chest. Assess them. You mean, take them? "That is a possibility," she said honestly. "Our first priority is the children's safety. If we can't place them with you, they would have to enter the foster care system until we can locate the mother." The system. I looked through the doorway. Malik had just managed to stack a block on top of his wobbly tower. He clapped his little hands, a tiny silent clap, and looked up at Dante for approval. Dante gave him a small, weak smile. These boys had lost their mother and father in the span of 12 hours. I couldn't let them be taken by strangers too. I couldn't let them be separated. They were all each other had. "No," I said, my voice firm. "They're not going into the system. They're staying with me. They are my blood." I told her about my house, 3 bedrooms, no debt, my pension from the Carpenters Union. "I can take care of them, ma'am. I have everything they need." "All right, Mr. Sinclair," Mrs. Jeffries said. "I believe you. I'm going to approve a temporary emergency placement with you. A caseworker will be at your house within 3 hours. They will give you the paperwork to file for temporary guardianship. You'll need to go to family court." "I'll do it," I said, relief washing over me. "Whatever it takes." "Good." She paused, and I heard her keyboard clacking again. "One more piece of advice, Mr. Sinclair. You said you filed a missing person report at the police station." "Yes, I did." "You go back there, or you call them, and you make sure they add a formal charge of child abandonment to that file. Make sure that exact phrase is in the report. It's not just for finding her. It's for protecting you." I frowned. "Protecting me from what?" "From her, Mrs." Jeffries said, her voice heavy with experience. "Right now you're the hero, but if she ever comes back, if it's months from now or years from now, a woman like that, she will twist this story. She'll say you stole them. She'll say you drove her off. A formal abandonment charge filed today is the only thing that will prove you didn't. It's the only legal document that proves she was the one who left. Do you understand me, Mr. Sinclair?" I looked at the phone. A cold chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning ran down my spine. "Yes, ma'am," I said. "I understand perfectly." I hung up and immediately dialed the police station again. I didn't know it then, but that single piece of advice, that one phone call, would end up saving my life 8 years later. The first year was the hardest. But kids are like new wood. They're resilient. They want to bend, not break. I was 64 years old, and I was learning to be a parent all over again. The world had changed. There were school forms I didn't understand, video games I couldn't pronounce, and a kind of deep, quiet sadness in the boys that I didn't know how to fix. So I didn't try to fix it. I just built around it. I went to court. With the abandonment charge from the police and the report from Mrs. Jeffries at CPS, the judge granted me full legal guardianship. It was just a piece of paper, but it felt heavy as lead. It meant they were mine. Officially. My silent house became loud. The sound of a basketball thudding against the driveway became the new rhythm of my days. That was Dante. He was 8 now. He'd found an old half-flat ball in my garage, and he spent hours out there just dribbling, as if he was trying to pound his anger into the concrete. Malik, now 6, was the quiet one. He was a tinkerer. He'd take apart my old radios, my broken tools. He'd sit on the kitchen floor for hours with a screwdriver just looking. Seeing how things fit together. I guess when your whole world falls apart, you get a strange comfort from seeing how things are built. They started calling me Gramps, not Grandpa, just Gramps. It felt solid. Of Brenda there was nothing. Not a postcard, not a birthday card, not a single phone call. The police report went cold. She had vanished as completely as a puff of smoke in a high wind. She was a ghost. And then just as our new life was starting to feel normal, the past came calling. The phone call came at 2:17 in the morning. I've learned at my age that no phone call after midnight ever brings good news. It's only ever death or trouble. I fumbled for the phone on my nightstand, my heart thick with sleep. "Hello," a man's voice, professional and void of all emotion. "Am I speaking to Mr. Julius Sinclair? This is—" I started to say "this is he," but my throat was too thick. "Yes, this is Julius. Mr. Sinclair, my name is David Rourke. I'm calling from the Fulton County Medical Examiner's office. We have your son, Andre Sinclair." I sat up in bed. The room was dark, but it suddenly felt cold. I didn't say anything. I just listened. "Sir," the man said, "I'm here. Your son was found. He was brought in about an hour ago. We found your number in an old address book in his wallet. The cause of death appears to be a suspected overdose." I looked at the wall. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I had been waiting for this phone call for 10 years. Every time Andre disappeared, every time he missed a holiday, every time he showed up on my porch looking like a skeleton, I was waiting. You see, when you have a child who's an addict, you grieve for them long before they're dead. You grieve for the person they were. You grieve for the person they could have been. You mourn all the lost potential, all the broken promises. So when the call finally comes, there are no tears left. There's just a profound, hollow exhaustion. The fight is finally over. "Mr. Sinclair," the man asked again. "Yes, I'm here," I said, my voice flat. "I'll be there in the morning to identify him." I hung up the phone. I didn't go back to sleep. I just sat in my chair in the living room watching the shadows get shorter as the sun came up. The morgue is the coldest place on earth. It smells like bleach and something else. Something final. I did the paperwork. A deputy led me into a small cold room. He pulled back the sheet. It was Andre, or what was left of him. He looked small and tired. The storm was gone from his eyes. There was just nothing. "That's him," I said. "That's my son." Back in the office, a clerk handed me a large sealed plastic bag. "These are his personal effects." It was a pathetic collection. A broken toothed comb, a Zippo lighter that didn't work, $3 in cash, and his wallet. A worn-out leather thing I'd given him for his 18th birthday. I sat in my truck in the parking lot. I couldn't go home yet. I opened the wallet. Old expired driver's license. A picture of the boys from when they were babies, cracked and faded. And then I saw it. Tucked into a hidden flap, folded into a tiny square. It was a bank receipt. I unfolded it. The date on it was from 1 year ago, to the day. It was the day before Brenda had dumped the kids at my house. It was a withdrawal receipt from their joint checking account. The amount made my breath catch in my throat. $15,000. It was all the money they had. I knew it. It was from a small insurance settlement Andre had gotten years ago. But that wasn't all. Folded with the receipt was another piece of paper. A carbon copy. A ticket confirmation. Greyhound bus lines. One-way ticket. Atlanta, Georgia, to Las Vegas, Nevada. The passenger name listed wasn't Andre Sinclair. It was Brenda. I sat there in my truck, the cold sun hitting the windshield. And the whole ugly picture clicked into place. She hadn't just abandoned her children. She hadn't just run off. She had planned this. She had drained their bank account. She had bought her one-way ticket to a new life. And then, with her husband's money in her pocket, she'd left him just as broke and desperate as she'd always been. She'd left him to die in the streets. And her children, they were just trash she had to take out on her way to the bus station. I organized the funeral. It was a small, sad affair. Me, Dante, Malik, a few people from my church. Brenda never showed up. Of course she didn't. She was probably in Vegas living it up on the money that should have been for her children. As I stood there watching them lower my son's casket into the Georgia clay, I didn't feel grief. I felt something new. It was a cold, hard resolve. She had taken my son's life. She had tried to ruin my grandson's lives. I would spend the rest of my days making sure she would never, ever hurt them again. 7 years passed, just like that. 7 years of scraped knees, report cards, parent-teacher conferences, and more pizza than a man my age should ever eat. The quiet, empty house I had been rattling around in became loud. It came alive. I am 71 years old now. My old workshop in the garage, once covered in dust, is now our headquarters. My woodworking tools sit on one side and on the other. Well, on the other is Malik's domain. Wires, circuit boards, little motors. He's 13 now and he builds robots. Robots that beep and whir and sometimes chase my feet when I'm walking by. He's quiet like his uncle was. No, not like Andre. He's quiet, but he's focused. He's solid. And Dante is 15. He's 6'1" taller than I ever was, and he's all teenage boy, all hollow legs and restless energy. The rhythm of my house is no longer the tick-tock of the grandfather clock. It's the thud, thud, thud of Dante's basketball on the driveway from the moment he gets home from school, until I yell at him that the neighbors are trying to eat dinner. They are good boys. They are my boys. We were in the kitchen one evening. I was making spaghetti, my wife Sarah's recipe. Malik was at the table, soldering something that smelled like burning plastic. Dante was leaning against the counter, scrolling on his phone already as tall as the refrigerator. Out of the blue, he spoke. "Gramps." I said, stirring the sauce. Do you think she ever thinks about us?" I stopped stirring. The only sound was the hiss of the sauce and the click of Malik's tools. She was a word we rarely used. She was a ghost. She was Brenda. I turned to look at him. His 15-year-old face was serious. This wasn't a passing thought. This was something he'd been holding on to. I chose my words carefully. I'm a carpenter. I know that some things once cut can't be uncut. A person's mind is a complicated place, Dante, I said, turning back to the stove. It's a messy workshop. It's not worth your time trying to figure out the thoughts of someone who chose to leave. It's a waste of good energy. Dante was quiet. Yeah, he said finally. I guess. But the answer didn't satisfy him. I knew that look. It was the look of a kid who was going to find the answer for himself. Later that night, long after dinner, I got up to get a glass of water. The house was dark. I walked past Dante's room. His door was cracked open. I saw the blue glow of his cell phone screen in the dark. He was under his covers, but I could see his thumb moving, scrolling. I paused. I'm not a man who spies. But something made me stop. I leaned just a fraction. I couldn't see the screen clearly, but I could see the search bar at the top of his web browser. I could see the name he was typing in. Brenda. My heart went cold. I had built a fortress around these boys for 8 years. I had given them stability. I had given them a home. I had poured every last bit of my savings and my love into them. But I had forgotten. I had forgotten about the one thing I could never protect them from. Curiosity. I had built a strong house. But Dante, my oldest boy, was now standing at the front door about to open it. To the very storm I had saved him from. And I knew standing there in the dark hallway that the ghost we had buried all those years ago was about to come back. And she was about to try and tear my house down to the studs. It was a Saturday. 2 weeks after I saw Dante searching for his mother. The bomb I had been waiting for finally went off. I was in the garage showing Malik how to properly countersink a screw on a new bookshelf he was building. Dante was on the driveway, the familiar thud, thud, thud of his basketball setting the rhythm for the afternoon. Then the rhythm broke. The dribbling stopped. A car door slammed. Not the sound of my old pickup. This was a heavy, solid, expensive thump. "Gramps!" Dante called out. His voice was strange, tense. I put my safety glasses on my head and stepped out of the garage. Malik was right behind me, and my blood ran cold. Parked at my curb right behind my rusty 20-year-old truck was a car. It was a brand new Audi sedan, shiny pearl white and so out of place in my neighborhood of working-class homes that it looked like a spaceship. The windows were tinted black so dark you couldn't see inside. My neighborhood is full of Fords and Chevys. We're folks who work with our hands. This car was different. This was lawyer money. This was doctor money. This was new money. The driver's door opened. A man got out. He was white, probably in his late 40s, wearing a tailored navy blue suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment used to. He had slicked back hair and a look on his face like he was smelling something bad. He adjusted his cuffs, his eyes scanning my house, my peeling paint, my overgrown azaleas. His lip curled just a little. Then the passenger door opened, and she stepped out. It was Brenda. 8 years. 8 years, and she hadn't aged a day. In fact, she looked polished. Her blonde hair was no longer the stringy, desperate mess I remembered. It was a perfect salon-fresh blonde cut to frame her face. She was wearing a cream-colored pantsuit, high heels, and sunglasses so big they covered half her face. A large diamond ring glittered on her left hand. This wasn't the frantic, cornered animal who had dumped 2 children on my porch. This was a completely different creature. Remade, rebuilt, expensive. She took off her sunglasses, and her blue eyes, the same ones Sarah had warned me about, landed on the boys. Dante was standing frozen at the edge of the driveway, the basketball forgotten, still tucked under his arm. He was staring at her, his mouth half open. He was looking at the woman from his phone screen, made real. Malik, my 13-year-old, instantly moved. He didn't step forward. He stepped back, half hiding behind the frame of the garage door, his eyes wide with fear. He didn't remember the woman. He only remembered the stories. He only remembered the ghost. Brenda's face broke into a wide, brilliant fake smile. It was a performance, a Broadway show. "Oh, my God," she breathed, putting a hand to her chest. "Dante Malik, is that you?" She started to walk toward them, her heels clicking awkwardly on the cracked concrete of my driveway. Look at you. Look at you both. You're so big." She got to Dante. He was taller than her now. She reached up her hand, trembling just enough to look convincing, and touched his cheek. "Dante, baby, it's me. It's Mommy." Dante was paralyzed. He was a 15-year-old boy caught between the ghost he'd been searching for and the reality of the man who had raised him. He just stared. Brenda then turned her smile on Malik, who was still hiding behind the garage. "And Malik, look at your hair, you got your daddy's curls." Malik just flinched and ducked further behind the wood. That's when I moved. I wiped my hands covered in sawdust on my old work jeans. I walked out of the garage and stood between her and my boys. I looked her dead in the eye. "Brenda," my voice was flat. I put 8 years of anger, of exhaustion, of basketball games and fevers in the middle of the night into that one word. Her smile faltered, just for a second. The actress slipped. "Julius," she said, her voice turning cool, "you're looking old." "And you're looking well off," I replied. "Las Vegas was good to you." Her eyes flashed, a direct hit. She hadn't expected me to know. She recovered quickly. I don't know what you're talking about." She turned back to the boys, her voice dripping with fake sweetness again. "Babies, I am so sorry. I've been looking for you for years. I'm back now. I'm all better. I'm here to take you home." "This is their home," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You don't have a right to be here. You need to leave. Now." "I'm not going anywhere without my sons," she snapped. The mask was coming off. "They're not your sons," I said. "Not anymore. You gave up that right when you left them on my porch." "I was sick, Julius!" she shrieked, her voice suddenly rising, carrying across the quiet street. Neighbors were starting to peek through their blinds. "I was a victim, Andre. He was hurting me. I had to run for my life." "You ran," I said, "straight to a Greyhound bus with $15,000 of his money in your pocket. You left him to die. You left them to be put in the system. Don't you stand on my property and lie to me." Her face went pale, then red. She was cornered, and just like 8 years ago, she looked for her escape. She looked back at the man in the suit. That was his cue. The slick man, who I now realized was her new husband, stepped forward. His name, I would soon learn, was Rick. "That's quite an accusation, old man," Rick said, his voice a smooth, condescending drawl. He walked right up to me, standing too close, trying to use his expensive suit to intimidate me. He was holding a thick manila envelope. "You're going to regret saying that," Rick said. He pulled a sheaf of folded papers from the envelope and pushed them hard into my chest. I stumbled back a step. I didn't even have to look at them. I knew what they were. "My wife Brenda has been through a terrible ordeal," Rick said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "She's been searching for her stolen children for almost a decade, and now she's found them, being held by you." I looked down at the papers in my hand. My eyes caught the header, Superior Court of Fulton County. "What is this?" I said. though I already knew. Rick smiled. It was a smile without any warmth. A shark's smile. That Mr. Sinclair is a lawsuit. We're suing you for full custody of Dante and Malik. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. And that's not all. We're also suing you for kidnapping. 8 years of it. Enjoy your house while you can, old man. Because by the time we're done, we're going to own it. And everything else you have. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from a rage so pure and so cold it felt like ice in my veins. That word, kidnapping. It was a poison dart. It was meant to paralyze me, to make me small, to make me afraid. I sat in a small, neat office in downtown Atlanta. The room smelled like lemon polish and old books. Across the desk from me sat Cynthia Marshall. She was a black woman about 50 with sharp, intelligent eyes behind a pair of stylish glasses. She wore a simple, professional dress. There was no wasted motion about her. She was the exact opposite of the slick, arrogant man who had stood on my driveway. My church pastor had recommended her. "She's not cheap, Julius," he'd said. "But she's a fighter, and you need a fighter." I had the lawsuit papers spread out on her desk, the ones Rick had shoved into my chest. Cynthia read them, her face a perfect, impassive mask. She didn't wince. She didn't gasp. She just read, her fingers steepled under her chin. The silence in the office was absolute. Finally, after what felt like an hour, she finished the last page. She squared the papers up, tapping them into a perfect, neat pile. Then she looked at me. "Mr. Sinclair," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This is an ugly, calculated, and very expensive legal assault. They're not here to negotiate." I don't understand," I stammered, though I was beginning to. "Kidnapping? How can they? I saved those boys." Cynthia leaned forward. "This isn't about what's true, Julius. Not yet. This is about the story they're going to tell. Their lawyers are from one of the biggest firms in the city. They're not being paid to find the truth. They're being paid to create a narrative, and in their narrative, you are the villain." I felt the blood drain from my face. What narrative? What could they possibly say? "They're going to paint a picture," she said, folding her hands on the desk. "And it's a picture you're not going to recognize. It'll go like this. Brenda was a young, terrified mother trapped in an abusive relationship with your son, Andre." "That's a lie," I said, my voice rising. "Andre was an addict, yes, but abusive. It doesn't matter." Cynthia cut me off, holding up a hand. "He's not here to defend himself, is he? So Brenda was the victim. She tried to leave, but she was scared. She came to you, her father-in-law, for help. And what did you do?" She paused, letting the question hang in the air. "In their story, you, a bitter, controlling old man who always hated her. You took her children. You used her moment of weakness to kidnap them. You told her if she ever came back, you'd have her arrested. You isolated her. You poisoned her sons against her. You spent 8 years erasing her from their lives." I was speechless. My mouth was dry. She can't. No one would believe that." "Oh, they'll believe it," Cynthia said, her voice hardening. "Or at least a judge might, because then they'll pull out their ace in the hole. The weapon they think is going to win this for them." "What weapon?" "Race Mr. Sinclair." I just stared at her. "Let's be very clear," she said, leaning in. "They are going to walk into that courtroom. Brenda, the successful, tearful white mother with her rich, powerful white husband. And they are going to point at you, a 71-year-old black man. And they are going to tell that judge that you stole her 2 biracial children, that you took them from their mother's culture, that you brainwashed them. They will make this about race, Julius, because it's the easiest, ugliest, and most effective way to make you look like a monster." My hands, which had been shaking, were now clenched into fists on my knees. She was right. It was a perfect, disgusting, brilliant narrative. It was designed to destroy me. "So," Cynthia said, her voice dropping to a businesslike tone, "that's their story. It's a good one. Now, what's ours? What do we have to blow that story out of the water because he said she said won't be enough, not against their money?" I took a deep breath. I reached for the old worn briefcase I had carried with me, the one I'd used when I was still running my carpentry business. I clicked it open. "I have this," I said. I pulled out a set of documents carefully preserved in plastic sleeves. From the day it happened, 8 years ago, I did what I was told. I handed her the first one. That's the police report, filing Brenda as a missing person. I handed her the second. That's the report from CPS, from Mrs. Jeffries, detailing the abandonment. And the third. And that's the follow-up, the official legal charge of child abandonment, the one Mrs. Jeffries told me to get to protect myself. Cynthia took the documents. Her eyes scanned them quickly, a small, almost imperceptible nod. This is good, Julius. This is very good. This is a foundation, a solid one. This proves you followed the law from minute one. She looked up. But it's not enough. Not enough. I was stunned. It's an official police report. It says she abandoned them. And her high-priced lawyer will say, of course she left, Your Honor. She was running for her life. Cynthia countered, already playing the part. He'll say Andre was a violent addict and she was terrified of you. He'll say she was suffering from PTSD and trauma bonding. He'll say she did call and you threatened her, told her you'd call the cops and say she was an unfit mother if she tried to come back. Cynthia leaned back. In family court, a crying mother is the most powerful force in the universe. They will bury us in reasonable doubt. We have to prove she wasn't a victim. We have to prove she was a liar. I sat there, the hope I'd felt draining away. It was all happening just as she said. They had twisted the truth into a weapon. And then I remembered. I remembered the smell of bleach and finality. I remembered the cold gray parking lot of the morgue. I have something else, I said slowly, reaching back into my briefcase. Something I've held on to for 8 years. I never knew why. But now I think I do. I told her about the 2 a.m. phone call, about identifying Andre's body, about the plastic bag with his personal effects, about the wallet. I pulled out a folded, yellowing piece of paper. It was a photocopy. I'd made it the same day I'd found it. This is a bank receipt, I said, sliding it across the desk, from Andre and Brenda's joint account. The date is for the day before she came to my house. Cynthia picked it up. She looked at the amount, $15,000. And this, I said, sliding over a second photocopy, was folded right next to it, a one-way Greyhound bus ticket, Atlanta to Las Vegas, passenger name, Brenda. Cynthia's eyes, which had been calm and analytical, suddenly lit up. It was a cold, sharp light, the look of a hunter who just caught the scent of blood. Well, 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 she whispered, tapping the bus ticket with her fingernail. Now that is interesting. And she looked up at me. This is beautiful, Julius. This completely undermines her running for her life story. You don't flee an abuser by calmly draining the bank account and buying a bus ticket to Vegas. You go to a women's shelter. You file a restraining order. You don't go to Las Vegas. A small spark of hope, real hope, ignited in my chest. So this is it. This wins the case. Cynthia smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was a warrior's smile. It helps. It helps a lot. It proves she's a liar and an opportunist. It gives us a counter-narrative. She put the papers down. But it doesn't answer the most important question. What's that? Why now? She asked, her eyes sharp as glass, pinning me to my seat. Think, Julius. 8 years. She's a ghost. She disappears. She finds a rich new husband. She has a brand new life. Why come back now? For 2 teenage boys she never gave a single damn about. She tapped the lawsuit. This isn't just for custody. You see this part: monetary damages, emotional distress, back child support. They're asking for over $1 million. People like that don't start a war this expensive unless they're sure there's a big payout at the end of it. She looked at me, her gaze unblinking. What does she think you have, Julius? What aren't you telling me? I was completely baffled. I have nothing. I'm a 71-year-old retired carpenter. I live on my pension. I have this house, and it's got a mortgage. That's it. I have nothing. She doesn't think so, Cynthia said, her voice grim. She's not here for the boys, Julius. She's here for something else, and we damn well better find out what it is. The war didn't stop after they left my driveway. It just went underground. It got smarter. Brenda knew she couldn't get past me. I was a wall. So she did what a smart general does. She went around the wall. She found the weak point. And the weak point was Dante. A package arrived 3 days later. It wasn't in a plain brown box, it was a crisp white elegant box from an expensive electronics store. It was addressed to Mr. Dante Sinclair. Not to me, to him. He tore it open in the kitchen. Inside, nestled in molded plastic, was a brand new iPhone. The latest, most expensive model. The kind I saw in commercials and always scoffed at. His old phone was a third-hand model with a spiderweb crack on the screen. I saw his eyes light up. He was 15. He was a kid. What was I supposed to do? Tell him he couldn't have it? Tell him it was poison? I would just be proving their case. I'd be the controlling, jealous old man Cynthia had warned me about. "Who's that from?" I asked, though I already knew. My voice was tight. He didn't look at me. He just ran his fingers over the smooth glass. It's from my mom." It was the first time I'd heard him use that word. Mom. In 8 years. And just like that, with one expensive poisoned gift she was in. She was inside my house. She had a direct encrypted line to my grandson's pocket. That phone was a Trojan horse, and my boy had just wheeled it right inside the gates. Dante changed. It happened fast. He became quiet, distant, secretive. He'd sit at the dinner table, his new phone always on, face up. He'd smile, but not at me or at Malik. He'd smile at the screen. The thud, thud, thud of the basketball. It stopped. He was always in his room. The door which he used to leave open was now always closed. I'd hear him laughing, sometimes a low murmur. Malik felt it most. "What's wrong with Dante, Gramps?" He asked me one night, his small face worried. He's different. He won't play with my robots anymore." "He's just 15, Malik," I said, trying to sound reassuring. "Teenagers get moody." But it was a lie. This wasn't moody. This was indoctrination. I walked past his closed door one evening. I heard him, and I paused. I'm not a man who spies, but I'm a man who protects his family. I saw the glow of his screen. He was scrolling his face, illuminated by it. He didn't hear me. I saw what she was sending him. Pictures. A house. No, a mansion. A huge white 2-story palace with 6 white pillars out front. A picture of a swimming pool, bright blue and sparkling in the sun, bigger than my whole backyard. A picture of Rick's Audi, and next to it, a red convertible. A selfie of Brenda wearing a white bikini, sunglasses on, waving from the deck of that pool. She looked like a movie star, and under the pictures I could see the text messages. "This is your new home, baby. This is what you deserve. Not that old falling apart house. Rick can't wait to meet you properly. He wants to take you to get your own car." She was waging a war, a psychological war. She was using the one weapon she knew as a carpenter living on a pension I could never compete with. Money. She was showing him a life I could never give him. And it was working. The tension in the house built for a week. It got so thick I felt like I was choking on it. It had to break. It broke on a Thursday. I came into the living room. Malik was trying to show Dante a new robot he'd built. The robot was whirring on the coffee table. Dante was on his new phone as usual, just scrolling, a small smile on his face. He didn't even look up. "Dante," I said. My voice was calm but firm. "Put the phone down. Your brother is talking to you." He snapped. It was like a switch had been flipped. He jumped up from the couch, his face suddenly red with a rage I had never seen in him. "Why do you care?" he shouted. "You're not my dad." The words hit me like a physical blow. "I may not be your father," I said, my voice low, "but I am the man who raised you." "Raised me," he spat. "Or lied to me." There it was, all the poison bubbling to the surface. "What did you just say to me, boy?" "She told me everything," he yelled, and now he was pacing, his fists clenched. "She told me the truth. She said she tried to call for years. She said you were the one, you threatened her. You told her if she ever came near us again, you'd call the cops and have her thrown in jail." "That is a lie, Dante." "No, you're the liar," he screamed. Malik had backed into the corner, his eyes wide, his hands over his ears. "You let us think that she didn't want us. You let us think she was dead." "I never said she was dead." I roared back, my own control finally breaking. "I told you the truth. I told you she left. I told you she chose to walk away from you. Because you forced her to," he screamed, his face inches from mine. "She was sick. Dad was hurting her. She had to run for her life, and you stole us from her. It was the narrative. Cynthia's narrative." He was reciting it word for word as if from a script, and then he delivered the final killing blow. "She's rich now, Gramps," he said, his voice suddenly dripping with a cold teenage scorn that cut me deeper than the yelling. "She and Rick, they can give us a real life, a good life. They can give us everything. What can you give us, huh? This dump, this broken-down old house in this crappy neighborhood, your pension." He looked at me and his eyes were cold. "I'm done living like this." He stormed past me down the hall to the room I had built for him. I heard the door slam. I heard drawers being yanked open, the sound of things being thrown. He was packing. I followed him. I stood in the doorway, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. "Dante, don't you do this. Don't you let that woman, that stranger, poison you against your family." He zipped up his old, worn-out school backpack. He shoved his new expensive phone into his pocket. He turned and pushed past me, shoving my shoulder. "She's my family." "Dante!" I yelled, following him to the front door. He yanked the door open and ran out onto the porch, and right on cue, as if it had been waiting, that shiny pearl-white Audi sedan glided up to the curb. The passenger door opened. Brenda was sitting there, bathed in the car's interior light, smiling. Dante ran down the steps. He didn't look back, not once. He threw his backpack into the back seat and climbed into the front. The heavy, expensive door thumped shut. The car didn't squeal its tires like hers had 8 years ago. It just whispered. It pulled away from the curb, smooth and silent, and disappeared around the corner. I stood on the porch, my chest hollow. I had lost. Malik was standing in the doorway behind me, his small body trembling, tears streaming down his face. "Gramps," he whispered, his voice broken. "Dante, he's gone. He left us." I didn't have an answer. I just put my arm around his shoulder. An hour later, my phone rang. I picked it up. A cold, official voice. "Mr. Sinclair, this is Ms. Thompson from DFCS. We've been notified that Dante Sinclair has been voluntarily reunited with his mother, Ms. Brenda, given that he is 15 years old and has clearly expressed his desire to be with her. We are placing him in her temporary custody effective immediately pending the formal court hearing." The line clicked dead. They had won. They had torn my family in two. They had taken my grandson, and they had used him to do it. After the Audi's taillights disappeared, I just stood there on the porch. The silence Dante left behind was 1,000 times louder than the silence Brenda had left 8 years ago. That first silence was just an absence. This one was a theft. Malik was still clutching my shirt, his small body trembling. "He's gone, Gramps." I put my hand on his head. "He's..." confused Malik. "That's all." But as I said the words, I knew they were thin. I was 71 years old. I was tired. I was a carpenter who had spent his whole life building, and this woman, this ghost, had just walked in and torn a load-bearing wall right out of my house. I looked at my own hands, calloused and spotted with age. I had been defensive. I had been reacting. I had been trying to protect what was mine, and I had failed. A carpenter knows. When the foundation is threatened, you don't just patch the drywall. You have to go underneath. You have to dig. You have to reset the footings. This was no longer a custody case. This was a war. And you don't win a war by hiding behind a wall. You win it by building a better weapon. The next morning, I didn't call Cynthia. Not yet. I had to get my tools in order first. I put Malik on the school bus, watching until it turned the corner. Then I got in my old truck and I drove not to my lawyer's office, but to my bank. The lobby was quiet. I sat down with the branch manager, a nice woman named Mrs. Peters. I'd known her for 10 years. "Mr. Sinclair," she said, "good to see you. How are those grandsons of yours?" "They're the reason I'm here," I said. I had come into some money 2 years ago. My older brother, Robert, he was a career Army man, a master sergeant, lived his whole life on bases from Germany to Korea. He never married, never had kids. He always said my boys were his boys. He passed away suddenly, a heart attack, 2 years and 3 months ago. He left me everything. It wasn't a fortune, not by a long shot. But after taxes and fees, his military life insurance policy, it was just over $400,000. I hadn't touched a dime of it. I'm a simple man. My pension covers the bills. My house is, well, it's mine. That money, Robert's money, was for Dante and Malik. It was their college education. It was their down payment on a house someday. It was the future I could build for them. It was sitting in a high-yield savings account, just waiting. Cynthia's question echoed in my head. Why now? Why come back now? And as I sat there looking at the balance on Mrs. Peters's computer screen, the answer hit me. It was so cold and so obvious it almost knocked the breath out of me. 2 years ago. She came back after Robert died. She hadn't just been searching for Dante on social media. She had been investigating. She must have been monitoring the probate records. She must have seen the inheritance. She didn't smell a loving family she missed. She didn't smell 2 boys she wanted back. She smelled money. She smelled $400,000. She saw my grandsons not as her sons, but as her lottery ticket, her payday. And I, the 71-year-old black man who lived in a small paid-off house, I was just the broke old guard dog she had to get out of the way. "Mr. Sinclair," Mrs. Peters asked, her voice concerned. "Is everything all right?" "Yes, ma'am," I said, my voice coming out as a low growl. "Everything is clear. I need to set up a trust, an irrevocable trust, for my grandson's education." I walked into Cynthia Marshall's office an hour later. I was a different man. The confused, defensive old man from our first meeting was gone. In his place was a 71-year-old carpenter who had just measured his enemy. I didn't sit down right away. I stood in front of her desk. "You asked me why she came back. You asked me what she wanted. I have the answer." I laid the bank statement on her desk, the one showing the $400,000 balance. This is what she's after." Cynthia's eyes widened. She looked at the paper, then up at me. "Where did this come from?" "My late brother, Army man, died 2 years ago." Cynthia's whole body language changed. She leaned forward, the hunter's look back in her eyes. "Julius, this changes everything. This is the motive. This is the whole case." "No," I said. "This isn't the case. This is the trap." She just stared at me. "She thinks I'm a poor old man," I said. "She thinks she can roll me. She thinks she can take Dante, use him as leverage, and sue me for $1 million, knowing I'll have to settle with this." I tapped the bank statement. "She thinks she's smart, but she's just greedy. And greedy people are sloppy. They don't measure, they just cut." "So what's the plan, Julius?" she asked, a small smile playing on her lips. "We stop defending," I said, finally sitting down. "We attack. First, I want you to file a countersuit, immediately." "A countersuit on what grounds?" 8 years of child support, plus damages. I've been feeding them, clothing them, putting a roof over their heads. I've paid for 8 years of doctors, dentists, basketball shoes, and robot parts. I want you to calculate every dime, and then I want you to double it. I want a bill for $240,000. I want to sue her for abandonment and financial restitution. I want to serve those papers to her, at that mansion." Cynthia was smiling now. "That will get their attention. It'll force them to spend money. I like it." "That's just the appetizer," I said. "Here's the main course." I pushed the other bank papers across the desk. "I've already started the process. I want you to finalize it. I want to create the Dante and Malik Sinclair College Trust. I'm putting all of it in, the full $400,000, and I want to be the sole trustee until I'm gone." "A trust?" Cynthia said, nodding. "Smart. It protects the money from the lawsuit. They can't touch it." "Oh, they'll be able to touch it all right," I said. "That's the trap. I'm not hiding it, Cynthia. I want them to know it's there. I want you to enter it into discovery. I want their lawyers to see it, to smell it. I want Brenda to taste it." Cynthia was confused. "But Julius, if they know it's there, that's when we set the trigger," I said. I leaned forward. "I want you to add a clause, a special one. I'm a carpenter. I call it a poison pill, a wedge. You're the lawyer, you find the right words. But it's going to say this. This $400,000 is for my grandsons, unless their mother Brenda or any of her associates or her husband ever in any way, shape, or form sues for custody or sues me for money or tries to make any claim on my estate." I let that hang in the air. Cynthia's eyes went wide. She understood. "Julius, I want the clause to state," I continued, my voice cold as steel, "that the instant she proceeds with this lawsuit, the second she refuses to drop this claim, the full $400,000, every single penny, is to be immediately and irrevocably transferred to a charity. Something she'd hate. The Atlanta Children's Orphanage. Something like that." Cynthia was breathless. Julius, you'd be disinheriting your own grandsons. No, I said. I'm giving Brenda a choice. A choice she thinks I don't know she's making. She can drop this ridiculous evil lawsuit, walk away, and my boys will be guaranteed a future. They get the money. Or she can continue. She can pursue her greed. She can try to take my house and the $1 million she thinks I have. And in doing so, she personally with her own hands will light her son's inheritance on fire. She will get nothing, and neither will they. I stood up. She's banking on my love for these boys. She thinks I'll pay any price to get Dante back. She's right. But the price is hers to pay, not mine. Cynthia Marshall looked at the papers. She looked at me. It's the perfect trap, Julius. She'll be so blinded by the $1 million lawsuit she won't even see that she's the one who has to choose. Exactly, I said. She thinks she's in a fight for $1 million. She's not. She's in a fight with herself, and I'm just going to give her the hammer to do it. The day of the hearing, it felt like walking to my own execution. The courtroom was cold. Not just the air conditioning, but the atmosphere. It was all polished wood and high ceilings designed to make you feel small. It smelled like floor wax and anxiety. We were on the right side. Me in my one good Sunday suit, the one I hadn't worn since Robert's funeral. Cynthia Marshall next to me was a picture of calm, professional steel. She had 3 neat tabbed binders in front of her. And next to me, his hand clutching mine so tight I thought my bones would crack, was Malik. He was 13, wearing a collared shirt I'd ironed for him that morning. He was staring straight ahead, his small face pale, his eyes wide and terrified but defiant. He refused to even look at the other side of the room. And then, there was the other side. It was an army. Brenda and Rick sat at the center of a swarm of lawyers in crisp, dark $1,000 suits. They had a team of at least 4 of them. They looked like a pack of polished wolves. Rick looked bored, smug. He was leaning back in his chair, whispering to his lead lawyer, a silver-haired man I'd learned was named Mr. Harrison. Brenda was in the center. The transformation was astonishing. The flashy, confident woman in the designer pantsuit was gone. In her place was a victim. She was wearing a simple, high-necked navy blue dress, the kind of dress a church-going woman would wear. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a modest ponytail. Her makeup was almost non-existent. She was clutching a small, wadded-up tissue in her hand. And the proceedings hadn't even started. It was a costume, and she was the star of the show. Then I saw Dante. He wasn't sitting with them. He was sitting in the first row of the gallery directly behind them, like a prop. He was wearing a new suit, one that looked stiff and uncomfortable on his 15-year-old frame. He was staring at his new polished shoes. He wouldn't look at me. He wouldn't look at his brother. He just sat there, a prisoner in his expensive new clothes. "All rise," the bailiff called out. The judge entered. He was a stern-looking man, Judge Elias Thorne. He looked at the mountain of paperwork, then at our side, then at their side. His face gave nothing away. "Mr. Harrison," the judge said, "call your first witness." "We call Ms. Brenda Collins," Harrison said, his voice smooth as honey. Brenda stood up, her movements small and frail. She walked to the witness stand, already dabbing at her eyes with that tissue. She swore her oath, her voice a trembling whisper. Harrison began. His voice was a masterpiece of synthetic sympathy. "Miss Collins, please, just tell the court in your own words. What happened 8 years ago?" And the performance began. Brenda looked at the judge, her blue eyes brimming with perfectly timed tears. "Your Honor, my first husband, Andre, he was a wonderful man when he was sober." Her voice broke. "But when he was using, he was a monster. He was hurting me." "Hurting you how, Ms. Collins?" Harrison asked, his voice gentle. He was violent," she whispered, as if the memory was too painful. He hit me. He threw things. I was so scared. Not for me," she sobbed, "but for my babies, for Dante and Malik." I watched her. My hands were gripping the armrests of my chair. I could feel Malik trembling next to me. A lie. A complete lie. Andre was a thief. He was a liar. He was a ghost. But he was never not once a violent man. He was too weak to be violent. So what did you do? Harrison guided her. I had to get them out, she cried. I had to run. I had no money. He controlled all the bank accounts. I had to save my children. So I went to the only person I thought I could trust. Her eyes full of tears moved and landed on me. I went to his father, to Julius. The entire courtroom turned to look at me. I just sat there. I stared right back at her. I gave her nothing. And what happened? Harrison prompted. Did he help you? At first, yes, she said. I dropped them off. I told him I just needed a few days. Just a few days to get to a women's shelter, to get a restraining order, to find a safe place. He knew what Andre was like. He knew I was in danger. And when you contacted him to get your children back, this was it, the main event. Brenda broke down. She hunched over her shoulders, shaking, burying her face in her tissue as she let out a gut-wrenching theatrical sob. She gasped. He wouldn't let me have them, the courtroom murmured. The judge leaned forward. Silence. He told me I was trash, she choked out. He said I was an unfit mother. He said my boys were his now. He said if I ever showed my face again, he would call the police. He'd tell them I was the addict. He threatened to have me arrested. He threatened to have me put in jail if I didn't leave and never come back. I felt Cynthia's hand on my arm, a gentle, steadying pressure. Breathe, Julius, she whispered. This is what we expected. Let her. So you were scared of him? Harrison asked. Terrified, she cried. I was a battered woman. I had no money, no power. He had my boys. He had all the control. I had to run. I had to just survive. So I left the state. I tried to call. For years. He had the number changed. I couldn't find them. And then Harrison delivered the final poisoned arrow, the one Cynthia had warned me about. Ms. Collins, he said, his voice now full of righteous indignation. Did Mr. Sinclair, did he ever say why he was so determined to keep your children from you? Brenda was quiet. She looked down. He was angry. Angry about what? She looked up at the judge, her eyes wide with a perfectly crafted look of fear and shame. He blamed me for Andre's problems. He blamed my... Go on, Miss Collins. He blamed my whiteness, she whispered. A gasp went through the courtroom. He said I was the white poison that had ruined his son. He said my boys, my babies, were black boys, and that he would not let a white junkie raise them. He said he was going to raise them right, to be black men, away from me. He said I wasn't their kind. It was a devastating lie, a work of art. In 30 seconds, she had turned me from a grieving grandfather into a violent, racist kidnapper. She had poisoned the entire well. Brenda turned her face streaked with tears to the judge. Her lawyers looked confident. Rick was staring at me with a smirk on his face. He thought they had just won. Your Honor, Brenda whispered, her voice broken and pathetic. I am not a bad mother. I was a scared mother. I spent 8 years, 8 long, terrible years, clawing my way back from the abuse. I finally built a safe, stable life. I have a good husband, a good home. I did it all. I did it all for them, to be worthy of them again. She pointed a trembling finger at me. And all I have ever wanted, is to have my babies back. That man, he stole my children from me." She collapsed into sobs. The courtroom was dead silent. The judge looked at me, his face grim, unreadable. I just sat there. I looked at Brenda, the actress. I looked at Rick, the smug producer. I looked at Dante, their pale, uncomfortable prop, and I just breathed. Measure twice, I told myself. She just finished her cut. My turn is coming. Judge Thorne let the silence hang in the air for a moment, letting Brenda's sobs echo in the quiet room. He looked at her, then at her lawyers, then at me. Finally, he turned to Cynthia. "Ms. Marshall, your witness." Cynthia stood up. She didn't move quickly. She moved with purpose. She buttoned her suit jacket, took a sip of water, and picked up one single file folder. She walked to the podium, not with anger, but with a kind of calm disappointment. It was the look of a teacher about to correct a child who had just told a very, very stupid lie. "Ms. Collins," Cynthia began. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. "That was quite a story, a terrible ordeal. You were a battered, terrified woman, correct?" Brenda, still dabbing her eyes, nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "I was. And you had no money, no resources. You were just running for your life." "Yes," Brenda said a little stronger. "I had to." "I see." Cynthia opened her folder. "Let's talk about the day you left. You testified that you were running from your abusive husband, Andre. Is that right?" "Yes," Brenda said. "Then I'd like to submit into evidence, Your Honor, what we've marked as Exhibit D." A copy was given to the judge and one to Brenda's lawyer, Mr. Harrison. Harrison glanced at it confused, and then his eyes widened. "Ms. Collins," Cynthia said, "this is a bank withdrawal receipt from the joint account you shared with Andre Sinclair. Can you please read the date on this receipt for the court?" Brenda stared at the paper. Her face went pale. That perfect tear-stained mask. It was starting to crack. I can't. My eyes are blurry." "Allow me," Cynthia said. "The date is for 1 day before you dropped your sons at Mr. Sinclair's home, and the amount, $15,000. Can you tell the court, Ms. Collins, how you managed to withdraw $15,000? All the money in the account. If, as you testified, your abusive husband controlled all the bank accounts," Brenda stammered. Andre, he told me to. It was for bills." $15,000 in cash. For bills?" Cynthia asked, her voice still light, still curious. "That's a lot of bills, Ms. Collins. But all right, let's say that's true. You were a terrified woman running for your life with $15,000 in your purse. So, as you said, you went to a women's shelter. Is that right?" "Yes. I was going to." Brenda said, her eyes darting to Rick. Rick was no longer smirking. He was leaning forward, his face dark. "I see. Your Honor," Cynthia continued, "I'd like to submit Exhibit E." Another paper was handed out. "This, Ms. Collins, is a carbon copy of a Greyhound bus ticket, purchased on the same day as the bank withdrawal. Can you please read the destination for the court?" Brenda just shook her head, her breath coming in short, quick gasps. "That's all right, I'll read it," Cynthia said. "One-way ticket, Atlanta, Georgia, to Las Vegas, Nevada." Cynthia paused. She looked at Brenda. She looked at the judge. She looked at the jury box, even though there wasn't one. "Las Vegas. Now, Ms. Collins, I'm not as familiar with the geography of women's shelters as you are, but is Las Vegas a common destination for battered women running for their lives?" I had a friend. I was going to." "Or," Cynthia cut her off, her voice suddenly dropping, losing all its warmth and becoming as hard and sharp as a chisel. "Or, Ms. Collins, is it true that you planned this, that you drained your addict husband's bank account, bought a one-way ticket to the party capital of the world, and then, as a final convenient errand on your way out of town, you dumped your 2 small children on a 63-year-old widower? You weren't running from abuse, Ms. Collins. You were running to a vacation. With $15,000 that wasn't yours." "Objection," Mr. Harrison shouted, jumping to his feet. "Speculation counsel is badgering the witness and overruled." Judge Thorne said, his eyes fixed on Brenda. "The witness can answer the question." Brenda was cornered. I don't remember." I was traumatized. She was falling apart. The actress was off script. You don't remember, Cynthia repeated. I see. She walked back to her table. The courtroom was dead silent. Brenda was breathing hard, her face no longer pale but a splotchy, angry red. The tears were gone. Let's talk about something you do remember, Cynthia said, her voice calm again. You testified that for 8 years, you tried to find your sons, but you couldn't. You tried calling, but Mr. Sinclair had changed the number. Is that your testimony? Yes, Brenda said, latching onto this part of the story. He hid them from me. 8 years, Cynthia mused as if to herself. Not one phone call, not one birthday card, not one single postcard from Las Vegas. You just couldn't find them. That's right. But then, Cynthia said, 2 years ago, something happened that made you a much better detective, didn't it? Cynthia picked up her third and final file. Your Honor, I'd like to submit Exhibit F, the death certificate for Master Sergeant Robert Sinclair, United States Army, Mr. Sinclair's older brother. Brenda's face went from red to a ghostly white. She finally understood. She looked at Rick. Rick's face was pure thunder. He knew in that second that his wife had just been exposed. Now, Ms. Collins, Cynthia continued, Robert Sinclair passed away 2 years and 3 months ago. He was a decorated veteran who, having no children of his own, left his entire estate, including his military life insurance policy, to his only living relative, his brother, Mr. Julius Sinclair. Cynthia let that fact hang in the air. It's a matter of public record, Your Honor. Probate court. Anyone investigating Mr. Sinclair's finances could find it. She turned, and for the first time she pointed a finger directly at Brenda. Isn't it true, Ms. Collins, that for 8 years you didn't look for your sons because they were poor? They were living with a retired carpenter on a pension. They were worthless to you. Objection, Harrison screamed. This is slander. It's unfounded. Is it? Cynthia shot back, her voice booming now. Because isn't it also true that you filed this lawsuit, this $1 million lawsuit, just 3 months after that $400,000 inheritance cleared probate? 3 months after Mr. Sinclair suddenly wasn't so poor anymore. The room exploded. Brenda was just shaking her head. No. You didn't come back for your sons, Cynthia yelled, her voice full of the rage I had been holding in for 8 years. You didn't come back because you were a good mother. You came back because you smelled money. You saw a payday. You saw a 71-year-old black man who you thought was an easy target. So you and your new rich husband came here to take his house. You didn't come back for your family. You came back for a paycheck. Judge Thorne looked at Cynthia, then at Harrison, who was sputtering, trying to object. He held up a hand. That's enough, Ms. Marshall. He turned his gaze, which felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, to me. Mr. Sinclair, after all this, do you have anything you wish to say to this court? I felt Malik squeeze my hand. I squeezed back once, then I slowly pushed myself up. I'm 71 years old. My back isn't what it used to be. I stood tall, or as tall as I could. I looked at the judge. I didn't look at her. Your Honor, I said, my voice quiet, but it carried in the silent room. I'm a carpenter, my whole life. My wife, Sarah, God rest her soul, she had a saying she got from my daddy, measure twice, cut once. I let that hang in the air. It means you think before you act. You understand the consequences. You make sure you know what you're doing, because some cuts you can't ever take back. I finally turned my head. I looked at Brenda. Her face was a mask of pure reptilian hatred. She didn't measure, I said. Not 8 years ago, and not today. She just cut, and she cut too deep. I nodded to Cynthia. That's all I have to say, sir. I sat down. Cynthia stood up. Your Honor, before you rule, we have one final document to submit. It has been prepared by Mr. Sinclair, and it is relevant to the financial matters that Ms. Collins and her husband have brought before this court. She walked forward. She wasn't holding a file. She was holding a single thick manila envelope, the same kind of envelope Rick had shoved into my chest. She handed it up to the judge. This was it, the moment from the teaser. Judge Thorne took the envelope. He looked at it. He looked at Cynthia. He pulled out the documents from inside. There were several pages, thick and legal. He began to read. The courtroom was silent. All you could hear was the rustle of paper as the judge turned the first page, then the second. As he read, his expression, which had been grim and stern, began to change. His eyebrows slowly climbed up his forehead. He read a line, then read it again as if he couldn't believe it. He looked down at the paper, then he looked over his glasses, straight at me. He just stared at me for a long, long moment. The entire courtroom held its breath. Then the judge looked at Brenda and Rick. Then he looked back at me. "Mr. Sinclair," the judge said, his voice low, almost a whisper. This is quite the document. Do they—" he nodded at Brenda's side of the room. "Do they know what's in this?" I took a deep breath. "Not yet, Your Honor." A shiver of confusion went through Brenda's legal team. Rick leaned forward, whispering to Harrison, "What is it? What the hell is it?" Judge Thorne took off his glasses. He looked at Brenda and Rick. "Well, you two have certainly brought a fascinating case here today. This lawsuit, it's not just for custody. It's for $1 million in emotional damages, plus retroactive child support. Is that correct?" Brenda, thinking this was her moment, sat up straight. Her lawyer, Harrison, stood. "That is correct, Your Honor. For the 8 years of trauma my client endured—" The judge held up his hand. Yes, the trauma. I've read about it." He picked up the papers from the envelope. "Which makes this all the more interesting. Because this, Mr. Harrison, is a legal binding irrevocable trust, filed 3 days ago by Mr. Sinclair. It's called the Dante and Malik Sinclair College Trust." Brenda and Rick looked at each other. Their eyes lit up. Rick's smug smile came back. They thought they'd won. They thought this was a settlement offer. "This trust," the judge continued, looking at the paper, "is funded in the amount of $400,000. I heard Rick let out a little gasp. He was already spending it. Brenda was smiling, a real greedy smile this time. "It's a very specific trust," the judge said, his eyes scanning the page. "It has it looks like a custom-written clause. A poison pill clause, it seems to be called." The smiles on their faces froze. "I will read the relevant section for the court," the judge said, his voice booming. Quote, "In the event that the beneficiary's biological mother, one, Brenda Collins, or her current or any future spouse or any legal representative thereof, does attempt to sue for custody of either Dante or Malik Sinclair, or does attempt to sue Julius Sinclair for any monetary damages, compensation, or child support past or present," the judge paused. He looked directly at Brenda. Her face was ashen. "The full and complete principal of this $400,000 trust, every single penny, shall be immediately and irrevocably dispersed in its entirety to a single charity, namely the Atlanta Children's Orphanage Fund. The beneficiaries, Dante and Malik Sinclair, will receive nothing." The silence in the courtroom was a vacuum. It sucked all the air out of the room. Rick looked like he'd been shot. Brenda's face, her face crumpled. The actress was gone. The greedy, cornered animal was back. "What?" she shrieked, jumping up from her chair. "No, that's illegal. He can't do that. That's blackmail. That's my son's money." The judge slammed his gavel. "Sit down. Ms. Collins, sit down." Harrison was trying to pull her back into her seat. "It is not your son's money," the judge roared, his face red. "It is his money, and he can do whatever he damn well pleases with it. He was right. He gave you a choice. He measured. You didn't." The judge looked at her, his eyes filled with contempt. "He offered you a simple, silent choice, Ms. Collins. You could have your son's future, or you could have your $1 million lawsuit. You could have the money, or you could have the children. And by walking into this courtroom today, by pursuing this disgusting charade, you made your choice." He pointed his gavel at her. "You chose the money." He slammed the gavel down. "Case dismissed. With prejudice." He wasn't done. "All claims by the plaintiff are rejected. The countersuit for $240,000 is granted. Full, permanent, and sole custody of both minors is granted to their grandfather, Mr. Julius Sinclair. A permanent restraining order is issued. Ms. Collins is to remain 500 yards away from Malik Sinclair at all times." He looked at Dante, who was sitting in the gallery, his face pale, his eyes wide. He had just watched the whole thing. Dante Sinclair, the judge said, his voice a little softer. You are 15. You are old enough to have a voice. Your mother has just demonstrated her true character. You have a choice. You can go with her, or you can go with your grandfather. It was the whole courtroom. Me, Malik, Cynthia, Brenda, and Rick. All watching him. Dante stood up slowly. He looked at Brenda, his mother, her face ugly with rage and greed. She was staring at him. Dante, baby. Come on. We're leaving. Dante looked at her. He looked at the floor. Then, he looked across the aisle. He looked at me, and he looked at his little brother. He didn't say a word. He just walked. He walked past the railing across the small divide, and he came. He came to our side. He stood behind me and Malik. He put one hand on my shoulder and one hand on Malik's. I'm coming home, Gramps, he whispered. I am Julius Sinclair. I'm a carpenter. A carpenter knows that sometimes a house gets so rotted. You can't just fix it. You have to tear it down. You have to find the snakes in the foundation. You have to clear them out. It's hard work. It's ugly work. But you do it. You do it so you can save the parts that are still good, the parts that matter, and then you take your good solid wood and you build again from the ground up. You build a new house, one that's stronger, one that the storm can never knock down again. I learned that in this life you can't just build walls to protect the people you love. You have to be willing to set traps for the wolves that come knocking. Greed is a blinding force. It makes people sloppy. They'll believe any story that leads them to a payday. But the truth is a foundation. It doesn't shout, it just is. And in the end, no amount of money or lies can stand against a structure built on patience, planning, and a truth that's been waiting 8 long years to be told. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.